Welcome to the Bear in Global channel. The intensity of trench warfare on the eastern and southern fronts increased significantly. Ukrainian army continues its operations without slowing down. Russian troops are trying to respond by launching counterattacks on Ukrainian operations. The number of military personnel in the region continues to increase day by day. Ukrainian forces repelled Russian attacks in 14 critical areas. He destroyed the checkpoints, assembly areas, positions, and air defense systems of Russian army. In the last 24 hours, many critical areas in Luhansk and Donetsk regions passed under Ukrainian control. It was stated that Ukrainian army made progress, albeit slowly, on the Eastern Front. In this process, Russian army began to organize operations from the Northern Front. Russian forces, losing power on the Eastern Front, want to support their soldiers on the eastern line over the Belarusian border. It is known that Russian forces carried out 170 attacks. Both parties continue to ship. Ukrainian forces want to encircle Russian forces by conducting simultaneous operations in Zaporozhye, Donetsk, and Kherson regions. Kiev has called for increased shipments to Ukrainian army. During this period, the intensity of the war on the Eastern Front increased more than ever before. Ukrainian army started shipping through Kharkiv to increase the pressure on the Eastern Front. A large number of soldiers from Kharkiv began to advance to the Eastern Front through Ukraine. The newly sent armored vehicles began to send large numbers of Ukrainian soldiers to the Eastern Front. Movements were shared in the Kharkiv region of Ukraine. Ukraine is preparing on a large scale. A 1.5-kilometer convoy of Ukrainian armored vehicles was spotted in Ukraine's border region, Kharkiv. He commented that the reason why the armored personnel carrier convoy sent by Western countries was seen in this region is that Ukrainian army will start operations in a short time. Ukraine also seems to be preparing for a major attack. It wants to start shipments and conduct operations in critical areas in the Kiev, Donetsk, and Luhansk regions. On the other hand, Ukrainian intelligence service made statements that Russian troops could launch a missile attack on Kharkiv. Since Russian army could not achieve success in ground operations, it carries out attacks with missiles. The aim of Moscow is to destroy the infrastructure facilities in the region with missiles and to disrupt the preparation process of Ukrainian army. The Kremlin is constantly attacking infrastructure facilities with missiles and drones. Putin wants to use these illegal attacks as a weapon against Ukraine. The Kremlin knows that it cannot achieve success on Ukrainian soil. For this reason, with the approach of winter months, it targets infrastructure facilities in Ukraine. It is thought that Moscow will continue similar attacks to make Ukrainian soldiers in the region surrender. Therefore, Kiev wants to buy more air defense systems from Western countries. If Russian military's attacks with missiles can be stopped, infrastructure facilities can be quickly restored. On the other hand, the Kremlin says that if Ukraine attacks Russian territory, there will be a nuclear war. But this is pretty funny and ridiculous, because Putin has done a lot of damage to the territory of Ukraine by organizing illegal attacks. Ukrainian army is conducting operations to defend and liberate its territory. In this process, it is quite natural for Ukraine to organize attacks on Russian territory. Russia has been attacking Ukrainian territory for about 10 months, but says that if Ukraine attacks, there will be a nuclear war. In this process, United States also gave a negative response to the issue of sending long-range missiles to Ukrainian army. Because the range of the missiles to be sent is more than 300 kilometers, Ukrainian forces on the Eastern Front can directly target Russian territory with these missiles. United States announced that it has suspended long-range missile shipments in order not to escalate the violence of the war. However, the recent attacks of Russia caused the NATO wing to change its decisions. The president of Estonia and many countries think that long-range missiles should be sent to Ukraine. USA and NATO countries started to discuss this issue. Putin's statements do not reflect the truth. The war continues not on Russian soil, but on Ukrainian soil. Therefore, we can say that the statements made by Russia are quite unfair. On the other hand, if a large-scale operation is launched, the military facilities of the Russian troops in their own country may be destroyed by Ukrainian forces. because after Ukrainian forces launched an operation, many Russian soldiers fled to Russian territory. In this process, Ukrainian army does not directly attack Russian territory, but Russian troops continue to attack Ukrainian territory from behind the border. Kiev began negotiations with armed forces of Ukraine. In a short time, the war could be completely transferred to Russian territory. After the statements made, the intensity of the clashes on the Eastern Front increased like never before. The Donbass region is currently hosting the most violent conflicts of the war. In the fight for the Ukrainian towns of Bakhmut, Avdiivka, and Pavlivka, losses increased significantly. With the increase in the intensity of the operations, Russian armored vehicles are being destroyed one after another. A large number of Russian tanks have been seen in the Donetsk region in recent weeks. It is known that these tanks were Russian T-80 tanks and were out of use by Ukrainian troops. In addition, videos of the destruction of these tanks were also shared in many places. It was also stated that as a result of a sudden operation by Ukrainian forces, many Russian military vehicles and tanks were seized. In Kiev, Russian army provides us with more military equipment than our Western allies. We express our gratitude to all of them. The fact that Russian army consists of inexperienced soldiers causes many soldiers to leave their military equipment and flee in the event of a possible attack. In this process, Ukrainian army directly uses these military equipment and tanks. We can say that Russian tanks attacked Russian troops. It was also confirmed by Russian reports that Russian soldiers suffered a large number of casualties. According to Russian soldiers, in Pavlivka alone, Russian 155th Marine Infantry Brigade has reportedly lost as many as 900 soldiers since September. Of that number, about 500 were neutralized and 400 wounded. The losses indicate that the brigade lost about half of its combat power. Despite the huge expenditure of troops and resources, Russian forces were unable to make a meaningful breakthrough in the Donbass. Meanwhile, in the Zaporizhzhia province in the southwest of Donbass, Russian forces appear to be preparing to evacuate the massive nuclear power plant complex that has been in the spotlight since the end of the war 9 months ago. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is the largest in Europe, and Russian forces captured it after a conflict. Russian army is losing a record number of soldiers and military equipment. For this reason, he started to organize attacks from behind the Russian border. Experienced soldiers of Russian army did not succeed in ground operations. Russian forces did not make any progress for a very long time. The Russian army has been shipping only to the defense and control areas for about 4 months. In this process, support continues to be sent to Ukraine from Western countries. European and Western countries have announced that they will increase sanctions against Russia. Ursula von der Leyen, President of European Commission, said that the decision to impose a ceiling price of $60 per barrel on oil transported from Russia by sea will increase the effect of sanctions and reduce Russia's oil revenues. Von der Leyen, stating that the ceiling price in oil will strengthen the effect of the sanctions against Russia, said, "The ceiling price will further reduce Russia's revenues." Defending that the ceiling price in question will stabilize the global energy market, von der Leyen said that as long as European Union companies trade below the ceiling price, they can provide various services to Russia's oil trade. Von der Leyen stated that the ceiling price will benefit developing and emerging economies and emphasized that the ceiling price can be adjusted again in time according to the developments in the market. European Union countries agreed today to set a ceiling price of $60 per barrel for oil transported by sea from Russia. The tension is increasing day by day. We'll see what happens in the coming days. We have come to the end of another video. You can like the video to support us. By subscribing, you can easily follow new videos. I wish you all happy days. See you.